Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's event. My name is Sandra Dillman, and I'm privileged to serve as faculty advisor and coordinator to two publications, OnCourse and Curios. Tonight we celebrate the 2017 edition of both publications with the musical stylings of Andy Allen and James Dalton. We'll also have a dance performance by Heart Space Dance Collective and presentations by OnCourse and Curios contributors. I'd like to start tonight's event by offering some history about CCC's publications. OnCourse, formerly known as Students OnCourse, was first published in 1999 as a way to showcase student work in CCC's classrooms. The title implies a double meaning. First, it's a play on words, meaning that the published work receives encores for a job well done. Secondly, and most importantly, the title suggests that CCC students are on course to completing their educational goals at the college. Initially, the magazines were compiled by faculty and then student interns. But currently, the magazine is designed and compiled by students in a publications class offered in the spring called COM 181. In 2006, former Northern Arizona Book Fest director Rebecca Burkett established a poetry and fiction writing contest where the contest winners would read their winning pieces during the Book Fest. The winning pieces were then published in OnCourse. The challenge we faced was that the contest entries didn't quite fit OnCourse's mission. So, to remedy this challenge, and to provide a place where local authors and artists could share their voices and visions, Curios was born. This was an important mission for CCC because before Curios, there wasn't a literary venue to reflect Northern Arizona's culture and rich diversity. Today, with our small publication budget and dedicated COM 181 students, we are able to provide our community with a place to publish their literature and showcase their art. Our first presenter is one of CCC's own art faculty. He is here to talk about his piece published in the 2007 edition of Curios titled Purex Building, Hanford Nuclear Reservation 4 Views. Please welcome Alan Peterson.
Thank you, Sam. All right, so I love this nice intimate setting, the soft lights, the table light. It's a great environment to talk about nuclear weapons. How many people know what the Hanford Nuclear Reservation is? Okay. Louder? How's that? The Hanford Nuclear Reservation is located in southeastern Washington state and has been the source of much of the plutonium and uranium for the United States weapons program since the Second World War. I became interested in nuclear energy and basically the whole industry when I was 8 years old. And since that time, I've done a number of works of art about nuclear weapons, facilities, and mining. And this particular painting, called the Purex Building, is of a building. Purex stands for Plutonium Uranium Extraction Facility. And it's one of what were referred to as the canyon buildings at Hanford. It was a facility where plutonium was extracted from irradiated fuel rods and then sent to weapons manufacturers. And it's an immense building. I've visited this site many times. My brother and sister used to work up there. And the building is approximately 1,000 feet long, 100 feet tall, and was active from the mid-1950s until the 1970s. And during that time, it processed approximately 75% of the plutonium produced at Hanford. There are also approximately a dozen nuclear reactors that produce the enriched uranium and plutonium. And I'm drawn to the bill. I'm drawn to these types of facilities because they represent such a toxic threat to the environment and humanity, but also because there's a certain paradox, I think, in that the building's been vacant now for more than 30 years, but it remains intensely toxic. Imagine there were more than, I don't remember, maybe 50 miles of piping within the facility that extracted the plutonium. And so I'm attracted to just the almost B horror movie kind of nature of the facility and the neighboring facilities at Hanford, and the fact that they lie within a beautiful landscape. I'm primarily a landscape artist, and southeastern Washington is rolling plains, grasslands, and it's quite beautiful. But within that beautiful landscape and beside the Columbia River lies this extremely toxic landscape that they're currently working on cleaning up. More recently, and so this is just simply 4 views of that facility, and more recently I've been doing paintings of the sources of uranium around Grand Canyon, geological structures called breccia pipes, which are, again, a wonderful paradox in landscape imagery because sitting beside the Grand Canyon, the surface expressions of the breccia pipes are exceedingly subtle and nuanced in contrast with the nature of Grand Canyon. So thank you for coming this evening, and I hope you have a great time.
This particular story was inspired by a colleague and friend here named Jeff Jones, so I wrote it for Jeff Jones, and it's called Lucky Cup. I can't believe I'm about to take time out from my vacation to work, but it's the only way I'm going to get it done in time. The beast of modern life demands to be fed its daily ration of reports, pie charts, and supply versus demand ratios. We need to be on the cutting edge, Billy, I can hear my boss say. Of course we do, is my customary response. My name is Bill. I've told my boss that, and he still calls me Billy. My boss exhausts me. Barb doesn't stir when I get out of bed in our little pop-up trailer. I quietly dress in jeans, flannel shirt, and my fleece jacket. The coldness of my boots gives me goosebumps when I slip them onto my feet. Outside, our 2 girls sleep, snug in their sleeping bags, heads hidden. Birds chirp and fog covers the still lake. The fishing will be good today if I can get to it without worrying about work. I breathe deeply of the wet pine scent floating in the morning air. The sunrise exists about an hour into the future. I tiptoe lightly through the pine needles to be as quiet as I can. The ashes in the campfire feel warm when I put my hand near, and I nestle in a couple of juniper logs. They will heat and smolder and should be ready to go for a morning fire. The girls will want pancakes slathered in butter and maple syrup when they get up. With a sigh, I hop into our hybrid sport utility vehicle. The car makes no sound when I hit the start button, but the lights on the dash indicate the vehicle is on. I slide the transmission into drive, and the only sound of my crime is rubber crunching on dirt. I leave our little campsite next to the lake to head into town. I saw a coffee shop that boasted Wi-Fi there when the family and I passed through. A couple of hours of work and a hot cup of coffee. The girls will never be the wiser. The coffee shop belongs to a chain. Even small towns are not immune. Several cars already occupy space in the parking lot before 6 a.m. Early risers around here. I open the door and smell the burnt sweetness of the heavenly bliss I've come to associate with a good cup of coffee, even if it is from a chain. People occupy tables, their faces intent on computers or smartphones. I place my computer bag at the nearest empty table to save that space. I get in line and immediately notice the smell, not quite overpowering, but indicative of a human body going ripe and in need of a good shower. I glance at the man in front of me. Dirt covers tan pants, the hiking shoes dusty, and a windbreaker wears shiny at the elbows. He champions grit under his fingernails and a blue button-up shirt with stains on the chest. A face presents the world with grizzly beard and dopey green eyes of a simple mind. either by birth or a wet brain of boozing. He smiles at me, I smile back. He holds a disposable cup of the chain in which we stand, the holiday variety, but it is 7 months past the holiday season. The cup has seen better days and carries the battle scars of heavy use with greasy film from fingers not interested in hygiene. The top is blackened and crinkles cover the once smooth surface. I presume the man homeless. I surmise we're about the same age, give or take a few years. A beautiful day, the man says. I nod in agreement and say, it most certainly is. His smile never wavers, and I smile again in that uncomfortable manner I do when I'm not sure what to do. Can I help you? The barista asks. She's thin, young, and wears the customary uniform of the chain like the other two workers scuttling around like June bugs behind her as they fill orders. She is vanilla, in vanilla surroundings. She does not smile at the man. Can I have a refill? He proffers the cup, and she glares at it. That cup's no good anymore. I can't see his face, but the cup lowers. His shoulders slumps. His shoulders slump. He turns and shuffles out the door. I watch him through the glass, and he sits on the edge of a metal chair at a metal table with an umbrella canopy. He plays with the cup in his fingers. May I help you? I turn, and the barista looks at me with a smile and cheery eyes. Coffee, please, I say, coming right up. She rings me up. I give her a $5 bill. She gives me back change. I throw $1 into the square plastic tin for tips. One of the June bugs scuttles over my coffee. I have to ask before I leave. Why wouldn't you give that man a refill? His cup's no good, she says. Why? It just is. Apparently, that settles the conversation to her satisfaction, and she glances over my shoulder to help the next customer in line. If I buy him a cup of coffee, would he be able to get refills with the new cup? I ask. She glances out the window at the man staring at his cup. Her face sours for a second before she catches herself. Sure, she says, if he has 55 cents. That is less than I put in the little tin for her tip. How about another cup of coffee? You got it, she says, and rings it up. I put a $10 bill on the counter. Whenever he comes in, let him have a refill until this runs out, I say. She squints at me, but she nods. I take the cup of coffee and head outside. Thought you might need this, I say. He looks up, sees the coffee, and smiles. Thank you. He takes the coffee, has a sip, and sets the cup down next to the old, beat-up holiday cup. He grabs the holiday cup and hands it out to me. You can have this one, he says. I only need one lucky cup. He smiles, and I take the cup. I may need a lucky cup someday, I say, and I smile in that uncomfortable manner I do when I'm not sure of what to do. He nods in understanding. I go back inside and fire up my computer. The Wi-Fi blinks and wants to know if I want to connect. I stare at the computer screen, then to the old holiday cup, then back to the computer screen. I close the computer and stuff it back into the bag. Outside, the birds chirp and the city comes to life as the sun burns away the morning chill. A beautiful day, the man says, still sitting at the metal table. Absolutely, I say. I get back into my vehicle and put the holiday cup on the dash. As I drive back to the campsite, I glance at the cup from time to time. My mouth waters with the thought of pancakes, slathered in butter and maple syrup. Fishing will be good today.
Hello, everybody. I really like this cafe bistro setup you've got going here. It makes me feel like I'm in a beatnik bar in North Beach in the 50s. I truly, unironically wish I had a beret right now. These are very short, so if you love this, I'm sorry, I'll be gone soon. If you hate them, don't worry, I'll be gone soon. I think I'll read from here. This is called Elegy for a Found Man. Save for the chimes, the sugar on the wind would have blown by unvoiced, like the ashes of the dead. But for your work boots empty in the boathouse, we would have left it unlocked, waiting still waiting for the chimney to give its gift and brush the low-set sky with the ashes of the dead oak trees we cut last fall, brushing soundlessly past the bells on the churches in the town where you did your most joyous penance. The next one's about that same length, so be ready. It's called The Churn. We know that precious is a hand that weeps its hardness into the plow, into the wood-splitting axe, into bread dough, into the littlest bits of toil. This is the way you knew love, as the forgotten, as a spent replacement for yourself, as a former conscript, laboring your way toward release so that, at last, you could return as a volunteer, shed of your fictions, to your nested baskets, lye soap, and soft linen napkins, snagging on your own restless skin and cried out fingers. Thank you very much.
That little burst of laughter when the poet was reading is because he said, let's imagine that we're in a beatnik bar in San Francisco in 1960, and I said I was. And it's true, it's absolutely true. I think it was called the Existential Bagel Shop, and it's where people like Ginsberg, all kinds of folks read, and I feel enormously lucky to have had that experience. So, hang on a second. I'm finding it. I want to commend the Northern Arizona Book Festival Committee for making sure this year that Coconino Community College and Curios and OnCourse were included in the program. I think the book festival is hypothetically representative of the community, and frankly, I think that this community college is one of the gems in our area. So thank you very much. I'm not going to read all of Animal Time because I think the time lapse is a little confusing. So we're going to start with Animal Time, 1985. I don't know how many of you know that there's a little old raggedy-ass cabin complex out off Old Months Highway. And people have lived in there, a lot of people recovering alcoholics, recovering addicts, hippies, real hippies, not hipsters, have lived there for years. And I was lucky enough to live there for about 18 or 19 years. But this is when I first got there, and I was a complete greenhorn. I was so naive. Animal Time. Hang on a second. Does this come out of the... Never mind. Animal Time, 1985. The western sky worked on me. The big whatever, which was the closest I could come to naming God, Goddess, Pan, Kali, Ma Earth, lived part-time in Desert Dawn and the last sliver of twilight. That much I knew for sure. And the more I knew light, the more I knew how little I knew of myself, my animal self, the inner ebbs and flows of blood and spirit that responded not to clocks, but to the immutable shifts of sun and moon. I understood that in disconnecting from pain, I had also removed myself from my deepest knowledge. In running toward the shelter of men's arms, I had fled the greater haven, and in my frantic busyness, had outrun the heartbeat of the earth. The moon jolted me awake, more precisely the absence of moon. I had been offered a little rental south of town, a one-room cabin in a cluster of other cabins in an old resort. There was no running water, no central heat. A wood stove sat in the middle of the living bed dining room. There was electricity and a weather-beaten shower house a few hundred feet away. The cabin and its surrounding meadow and pine forest seemed like wilderness, vast, harboring the possibility of bears and the assurance of silence. One more step toward nowhere to run. I called the owner, I'll take it, and moved in late summer. The first evening, I stepped out of my cabin to walk to the shower. I carried a flashlight, a whistle, and a can of bear spray for the 50-yard journey. Sunset burned rose gold. The full moon drifted up beyond the dark pines. I stood alone in the clearing, tilted my face to rose light, then silver. I tucked the whistle in my bathrobe pocket and put out the flashlight. The next night, I walked out at the same time. No flashlight, no whistle, no bear spray. The setting sun glowed molten. The eastern sky cooled and went dark. I waited for the moon and waited and waited. I wondered if I had stepped into a twist in time or finally gone crazy. At last the moon rose. My landlord came out of his cabin. The moon was late, I said. He laughed gently. No, he said, it's right on time. You've been in cities for too long. I wondered where I had been through all my northeastern nights, blind perhaps, and how an intelligent woman with a background in laboratory science had seen so little. I began to rise with the sun and watch through sunset. I'd wait to put on the lights in my cabin, let the place grow cool blue, then gray, then dark. I felt the days shrink, the nights begin to stretch out. I felt my spirits lift as sun broke free from monsoon clouds. I understood how the gray light of my eastern home had dragged me down, how the western light was changing the cellular structure of my body, transmuting my inner clock into a keeper of animal time. Animal time, what geese know, and lizards, and my own species long, long ago. Thank you. I'm going to say that if you want to read more of my work, if you like my work, my second short story collection came out in March. It's called The Talker, and a bunch of the stories are based here in the Colorado Plateau, so see if you can find it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I don't have any cool anecdotes, so I'm just going to get to reading. In a world today that is filled with unwillingness to compromise, a lack of humanity, and a moral demise, I think of a time where that wasn't so. I think of a time where volunteers were being turned down because there were masses of people willing to lend a helping hand. I think of a time when people lined the streets in silence, holding nothing but candles, while wearing their hearts on their sleeves. I think of a time where the Fenway faithful cheered as the New York Yankees took the field. I think of Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. There is a man kneeling on a slab of concrete, looking at the helmet of a fallen firefighter. He's covered in debris, and his reflective flash gear is barely visible. Sirens ring out in the street as this man kneels in a helpless silence. Below his feet lay his 343 brothers, who he can only hope to deliver to a proper burial ground. He cares not about himself, but about the families he will present flags to and the countless memories that could have been. He keeps digging through the rubble, despite the circumstances, in hopes of finding just one more brother to return home. This man is not a metaphor, and he's not fiction. This is simply a man performing his job during an impossible situation. Papers rained down from the sky, and a thick layer of smoke blanketed the streets of New York, turning a bright, sunny Tuesday morning into a hellish nightmare. Millions of Americans turned into the unfolding chaos in schools and at work. We collectively gasped when the second plane hit the South Tower, and we cried as we watched both towers collapse to the ground, taking 2,977 innocent lives with them, including the Pentagon and Flight 93. There was no answer for this appalling shock, and no logical reason why these mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters were taken in a span of only 102 minutes. Only raw emotion, disbelief, and paralyzing sorrow. The most daunting memory from that day to me is the aftermath. Looking at the footage in the New York City streets, lined with pictures of missing loved ones, and the candlelit vigils held by grief-stricken families who desperately tried to avoid the inevitable. As the pictures fell to the ground and the fleeting seconds dwindled down, so did any hopes of survival. In the darkest of times is where the smallest bit of light gives us hope. On 9/11, that glimmer of light was unity. The American national anthem rang from the streets across America, London, and Paris. Flags were draped from apartment buildings, plastered on windows, and displayed proudly on front lawns. The phrase "United we stand" became a national slogan as the entire world wept for New York City. It is in tragedy that we find unity, and this nation's greatest tragedy brought every American closer together. It is tragically fitting that this nation's darkest day is also a symbol of the American spirit and unity. Today there rests a beautiful memorial where the Twin Towers once stood tall. There also stands a new building that reaches for the sky and rightfully owns the New York City skyline. Like the American spirit, this building symbolizes a rebuilding of hope and a fight within to come back bigger and to stand tall in the face of adversity. This new building is called One World Trade Center, as in we are all one, united in memory of what happened that day. Lady Liberty will forever shine her light in the direction where the Twin Towers once stood and where One World Trade Center now stands. Her light stands for the American fighting spirit and unity to lend a helping hand like we did that day and the weeks which followed. To me, the definition of unity is 9/11. From the brave firefighters and police officers who selflessly ran into almost sure death to the thousands of volunteers who raced to the aid of possible survivors. On 9/11, we united to help remove the debris. We united to volunteer at hospitals. We united to give our heroes proper burials. We united by giving our blood, sweat, and rivers of tears. And we united to stand as one, as the people of the United States of America, to tell the world that we will forever stand together in unity.
My portrait. Make sure you get all three of me, I told the artist, who already had begun brushing across the canvas, leaning on an easel. I mused as he worked. One of us is a 10-year-old who gives me wonder, curiosity, mischievousness, and naivety. He is simple in a complicated world, doesn't understand it, or America, or his house in which things disappear and are found again later. He asks, why can Gene Roddenberry figure out warp drive but not NASA? Another is a 16-year-old with uncertainty, self-consciousness, and self-doubt who fears failure more than anything. He has impatient, youthful energy, and he is shy. He wants to say, bite me, to anyone who angers him, and then thrust a resume of knuckles into their throats for future reference. But he has black belt discipline and is thus harmless. He has a lust that began with the urge of mitosis 3 billion years ago and believes that the process was fun even then. That was why life began. When he makes intimate advances to women, he hates it when they ask him to control himself. Why can't women show this fabulous self-control and increase their sex drive? I'm the elder with the experience and wisdom of 59 years who has to support the other two with food, shelter, movies, and dates. I'm the busy guy. I take mood disorder meds because my emotions can be overly capricious or confusing. I began a dedicated career of instructing children in 1972, but it's my daughter Jamie who is all important. Teaching is what I do. A father is who I am. Jamie displayed my 10-year-old self when she was 4, walking her new puppy. A man was standing on his second-story balcony when she called up to him. Hey, mister, do you want to pet my dog? It made perfect sense. Everyone was another her, is another me, and wanted to rush up to little Cinder and cuddle him. The stranger called back, no. Okay, she replied brightly and happily moved on. I was puzzled with her cheerfulness at rejection. She knew something I didn't. It took me a while to believe this, but I do now. In my life, I'm allowed but one true relationship, and I had mine. My marriage changed me from an adult into a human being. Its ending is the biggest failure of my life because I grew up wanting one person, one family, and one trip to the altar. My ex-wife's friendship is still my North Star. After my divorce, I accumulated 10 parrots and a girlfriend named Robin. I stayed at her house in Mesa on weekends. When I had my only modeling gig, I got up extra early to allow for getting lost. I needed to shave closely, and I panicked when I realized I forgot my travel kit. Robin handed me a brand new big plastic shaver. I lathered up and began. Nothing happened. I stroked harder, but my stubble stood firm. I couldn't press too hard because I feared tracks of moist scabs on my face. Exasperated, I told Robin that the Bic didn't work. She was puzzled. My electric razor was the dismal solution. I left her house, got lost, and arrived in time. I went to the woman who does makeup for the agency. Do you realize you have 2 different colored socks on? I'll tug your pants lower to cover them. I got through the job for realty executives to their satisfaction. That night I was in bed with Robin. She jumped up and exclaimed, "Wait a minute," and ran to the bathroom. There was uncontrolled laughter. She came back holding the Bic razor as if it were a scepter. While she was still hysterically shaking and choking, she took off its plastic top. I asked, "What's that?" "It's a protector." "From what?" "From cutting yourself." "I want to be cut. That's how I get the whiskers off." She doubled over. "What's so funny?" She knew something I didn't. When she could finally speak, she told me I looked like a little boy, just lying there bewildered. I wondered, how do I turn the comical into the romantic? I read, or maybe someone mentioned, that girls get turned on if you talk filthy to them in bed. Youngsters, even when they're 59, will believe anything that adults tell them. In the dark, I whispered dirty words to Robin. She went into gyrations of hilarity. I like amusing people, even when it's unintentional, but I also like being in on the joke. Now what? That was like my little old grandmother cursing. So much for advice, and so much for obscenities. I should have known better, because it wasn't natural. I try to be respectful, kind, and caring to the woman I'm with. I was always that way with Robin. After 5 minutes of unrestrained guffawing, she noticed me watching her without guile. With quiet intent, she suddenly embraced me. She never refused my fierce passion, loved my innocence, and appreciated my good sense. In moments, 4 hearts beat as one, and 3 of them were mine. There's the mire of my faults. I don't know how dark or how bad they can be. I've never been tested in my fortunate life. I have a distressing amount of cowardice, deceit, selfishness, laziness, crankiness, and vengefulness. Wait, I changed my mind about that last one. Vengeful is good. I'm tired of the innocent getting kicked around. Hurt the bad guys. I have some cynicism, but not too much. Mankind is basically good. I am too, but my worst side is the bad decisions I've made for my daughter and will never forgive myself. In my quiet moments, the wound still trickles. My flaws are there in despicable amounts. I am ashamed as the artist works uninterrupted. But if a man must have faults, what's wrong with mine? Mrs. Shannon said in Night of the Iguana, "Nothing human disgusts me unless it is unkind or violent. I hold her standards. I wonder if other guys are like me. I don't know, because I can only be one male at a time. It's hard to believe females can be like me. I've been close to those who have been bashed, treated like meat, have had long-term hurts, or had ex-husbands who steal their possessions. These women occasionally wanted fatherly moments recreated, being warmly held unconditionally, and just be touched with a subliminal healing without payoff, and receive an occasional kiss on the forehead. I like being sensitive in those quiet moments. My partner briefly becomes a 10-year-old, as she deserves to be for the rest of her life. I can feel my adult nurturing and caring for her as we are silent in a different way. Among the three of us, the consensus is that we are in the wrong reality. Our heaven and our good day are the same. Each morning I would be with a blonde, each afternoon I would be with my daughter, and at night, me and Roger Rabbit would shoot up Toontown. "Did you get us all?" I asked as the artist finished the last stroke. He turns the easel. I inhale.
I would like to begin with this, with the fact that I'm an alumni here. CCC was like home to me for 2.5 years. It was a great start of my academic career. I continued at NAU, and I'm still at NAU in graduate school right now. So the geology of the Southwest is a phenomenal component of our reality, and I was lucky enough to have many opportunities to explore the area with my cameras, and I'm pretty sure all of you know where the Antelope Canyon area is located. It's near Page. The access is through Navajo operated tour company called Antelope Canyon Tours. So I highly recommend, if you want to go and explore the area as a photographer, to contact this company, because that's the best way to go. And also, I strongly believe that we have to respect the legacy of the Navajo Nation. So this is what I did, and it's always a good idea to be respectful with the guides, to have really nice conversation with them. Then they will give you way more than, you know, the tour description. And believe me, it's worth it, because this place, it's not easy to be photographed. You will need time, and you will need patience, and you will need your best in a field. Tripod is mandatory. Bring with you your best wide lens or lenses, depends on your budget, and try to be creative, because this shot, that was not, that happened by accident. You know, the position of the sun, I just happened to be there when this moment occurred. But the guides know, you know, the position of the sun. When you go to the Upper Antelope Canyon, this is the famous place, you know, with those sun rays going through holes from above to the ground. But in each time of the year, pretty much every day, the sun location, you know, is different because of the rotation of the Earth. So just follow the guides. They know exactly where you're supposed to go and take the best shots for this particular day and this particular time of the year. And I don't know, it was a blessing, it was a great experience, and I'm really proud that CCC published some of my photographs. It's great, and I wish you all to have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
What a wonderful way to end our evening. Thanks so much, Heart Space Dance Collective, and thanks again to all of our OnCourse and Curios readers tonight. In closing, I'd like to express our sincere thanks to CCC's president, Dr. Colleen Smith, interim vice president of academic affairs, Dr. Dudley Gardner, Dan Begay, the CCC English department, woohoo! The Student Publications Advisory Council, the Northern Arizona Book Festival, woohoo! And all the staff and faculty members who worked so hard to make tonight such a special occasion. Thanks for coming out. Have a good night. Grab some magazines on your way out and submit for the next edition.